That's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. And we're gonna have to start from the beginning. So there's finally a new drone company on the scene, and it's called AntiGravity. A bit too many syllables, if you ask me. And it's a spin-off company incubated by none other than Insta360, the makers of some of the most popular 360 cameras on the market, like the Insta360X5. AntiGravity was started initially by a group of employees at Insta360 that were huge drone enthusiasts with an idea of creating something that would change the flying experience. A 360 camera drone that not only lets you capture and reframe your video later, like you'd expect from a 360 camera, but even more impressive is the immersive 360 flight experience, letting you look in any direction whenever you want while piloting your drone. And we'll get to how all of this ties to go-karting, but first, let's take a look at what this upcoming drone can do, how AntiGravity is approaching the launch of this drone, as well as my initial flight experience with this drone. The drone is called the AntiGravity A1, and it's a really small drone, about the size of a DJI Mini 4 Pro, and it weighs 249 grams, so it's exempt from FAA registration if you're flying for fun. It's got a camera on the top and bottom of the body, and just like on a traditional 360 camera like the X5, it uses software to stitch those two images together to create a 360-degree video file that you can reframe after you shoot. And you won't see the drone in the footage at all, so it's like a magic invisible camera in the sky. Similar to the Insta360X5, the total resolution of both cameras combined gives you an 8K video file. Now, I'm not talking about 8K in a single flat video file, but rather 8K for the entire 360 video, which is enough to give you good looking footage whenever you reframe. And on release, the main kit will include three things. First, of course, the A1 drone itself. You'll also get a motion controller to pilot the drone with, which is pretty similar in concept to the one that comes with the DJI 𝗚𝗘𝗟𝗟𝗪 series of drones, and we'll talk more about this later. And you'll be getting the vision goggles, which you'd expect for FPV style drones. That also includes a screen on the front of the goggles that can show things like your current FPV view, so your friends around you can see what you're seeing. Not a mandatory feature, but a pretty cool one. So this journey began for me a little over 2 months ago when I was invited to demo a pre-production unit in New York and give some feedback on the initial design and idea, and immediately I was blown away with how familiar and yet how different the flight experience was. Like, let me explain. So if you've ever flown the DJI 𝗚𝗚𝗟𝗪𝗪, you'll know that the RC motion controller lets you basically turn your wrist to steer left, right, up, down, so point the camera up and down, and that's how you fly. And alternatively, you can turn on head tracking, so that way when you look to the left with your goggles, it will point the nose of the drone to the left. But again, this is a physical connection. So when I turn this, the drone has to physically turn, and now it's reoriented. Here's what's different about the AntiGravity A1 drone. The controller and your headset are completely decoupled. So how do you fly this new A1 drone? You point your controller left, right, up, down, and that will point where the nose of the drone's gonna go. And you'll see this in your goggles with a little white circle where your drone's flying to. But you can turn your head 360 degrees. You can look all the way down, all the way up. I can fly to the right while looking behind me. They are completely decoupled, and the feedback, the speed at which you can look around is instantaneous, which is a completely different experience. And on top of that, because this is decoupled and it's a 360 video file, you don't have to worry about where you're looking when you're flying because it's not going to affect the image that you're capturing, since you can just reframe it later. I'm telling you, it's one of the most immersive experiences I've ever experienced, and the closest thing I can imagine being to this experience would be if you're a professional FPV pilot, because you're able to put in such precise movements where you can really point the camera wherever you want while you're in the air whenever you want. But this is doable for a beginner. Heck, this is doable for somebody who's never flown a drone before. It's just super intuitive. So now that brings me to why I was go-karting in the intro and what 360 camera drones can do for filmmakers. Last month, AntiGravity put together a press event in California, inviting out creators like myself who love to test new camera gear, as well as your online tech press outlets to learn more about the new A1 drone and to put it to the test. And what more of a fun way to test 360 camera drones than to chase each other in go-karts? Honestly, there were a few of us who were probably more into the go-karting than flying the drone by the end of the day. Like there was a whole racing championship that we did, and like that's why I crashed and spun. All right, I'll talk about that at the end of the video because I should probably focus on the drone first. Right, so why are 360 camera drones going to be game-changing? First of all, FPV piloting isn't easy. I'm not saying you can't pick it up after you put in some practice, but I can tell you from personal experience that the barrier to entry to pilot an FPV drone in full manual is pretty high. And yes, I practiced for at least 8 hours on an FPV sim game a while back, but I honestly didn't have enough time to properly get into FPV. And I can imagine that that's the same scenario for a lot of people, which is why drones like the DJI Avata were awesome, because it made FPV so simple for beginners. But here, AntiGravity goes a step farther. Not only does it make the piloting experience super easy, but it also makes capturing super sick shots and super complex camera moves extremely easy as well. Which brings me to point number 2. Shoot first, frame later. Like on other 360 cameras, you can focus on flying smoothly, tracking a subject, creating a wide orbit, or whatever camera move first, and do the actual framing later. That means instead of nailing a complex camera move on a drone while you're shooting, you just need the physical movement of the drone to be correct. Then you can do all of the camera work in post. On top of that, if you're filming stuff that like only happens once, more of a documentary style, like a go-kart championship race, where instead of being able to plan a shoot around it, a single flight with a 360 drone actually means capturing multiple shots at the same time. A single flight could mean you end up capturing a handful of perspectives, giving you so much more room for narrative storytelling after the fact. And finally, something that's especially important in today's era where you have to deliver in horizontal and vertical aspect ratios, thanks to the fact that it's a 360 camera, that means you don't have to choose one over the other. You can reframe when you're editing so you can deliver natively to both aspect ratios. Now, let me keep it real with you. While I do really like the footage I get out of cameras like my Insta360 X5, which basically has the same look as the A1's camera, it's not going to compete with footage that comes out of a mirrorless camera's sensor, and obviously it's not going to compete with a drone like the DJI Mavic 3 Pro or 4 Pro when it comes to image quality, because those drones have larger sensors and they're built for filmmaking. Whereas the AntiGravity A1 is built for capturing 360 footage that you can reframe later, and honestly, partially designed for the flight experience itself. But I'm super excited to see what the final image will look like coming from the new AntiGravity A1 drone once I get my hands on a production version. So stay tuned, I'll try to be the one to give you guys that first look. One other thing I wanted to note here real quick, while I and the other creators were flying the A1s at the GoKarting event, we all noticed that there was some pretty significant transmission issues happening where our FPV feed would essentially freeze while flying, which was pretty weird to me since the month before when I tested an even earlier version of the drone in New York, that like didn't happen at all. I'm not sure what the issue was, but I did talk to the people at AntiGravity and they said that they're working on resolving the issue and they're already making progress. And I imagine they wouldn't be able to ship this final product with this issue present because that would be like pretty dead in the water. So I have faith that they're gonna have that issue resolved. Oh, and here's something that AntiGravity is doing with the launch of this drone that I'm a huge fan of, the co-creation program. Basically, it's an initiative to create an open and supportive community where users and creators help shape the future of their products. If you sign up and are selected for the program, they'll send you a pre-production unit to test for yourself so you can give them feedback on what could be improved. And from what I've heard, there's some monetary compensation potentially involved, along with a free production version of the drone once it's officially released. I'll leave a link in the description down below for this co-creation program if you're interested in participating, but overall, generally speaking, I'm a huge fan of this approach because I really hope that this drone is built from the ground up based on what we as the consumers actually want in it. All right. Now let me tell you about go-karting. Basically, throughout the day, we got to take turns driving go-karts and filming each other with the drones, and as the day went on, a few of us got really into the go-karting part. We found out that there would be a final championship race at the end, and our practice laps were going to be our qualifiers to determine if we made it into the final race and what position we'd start at. Turns out, we were all pretty competitive, with David Manning and Ren being the most dominant drivers all day. So going into this final race, starting at position 6, I was pretty excited, sitting right behind my chosen frenemy of the day, fellow creator Darren McCarty. Super cool guy, by the way. With that in mind, my goal was simple. How many positions can I improve? And for a bit, it was some good driving. 4 of the 7 laps went by with very little change in position, so I started to get a little antsy. I kind of needed to gain some time somewhere, and this little chicane in the middle of the track was one of my best spots, so I was determined to make up some time, and I started slipping, and I didn't want to tap the brakes because I didn't want to lose time, so I committed, and I slid into the barrier, and like 5 people passed me, which dropped me down to 12th place. I had no one to blame but myself. And at that point, I knew I had to lock in, and I proceeded to race my fastest lap of the entire day after that, and with a few overtakes, I eventually got myself an 8th place finish. Congratulations to Ren for 1st place, and congrats to Darren for holding his lead in front of me. But honestly, I was super proud of myself. Not only did I improve my best lap time by about 4 seconds since my first race of the day, I had the 3rd fastest lap time of the final race, excluding 𝗖𝗛𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪, who works there and is an absolute beast, so he doesn't count. Anyways, it was an incredibly fun event. We got to test a really cool new product, and I got to make a bunch of new friends. But I think the last thing I want to say is, to everyone that was there, rematch Las Vegas NAB next year. You guys on?